All right, we're going to get started. Thanks, everyone, for coming. I'd like to call the meeting to order. If I can have a motion to adjourn executive session and enter the regular meeting. All in favor? Thank you. If we can stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance, flag of the United States of America, to the republic, and nation, justice.
Yeah, we're going to start the meeting with a moment of silence from a former educator in Red Hook that worked here for 16 years, Jean Campbell. And I know Dr. Hayes is going to say a couple words too.
Thank you. So Mrs. Campbell worked in the school for 33 years. She taught here. She was actually my 5th grade teacher. She was a wonderful woman and inspired a love of literacy and books for me, but I know she touched the lives of many people. She was very involved in the community as well. She gave back to her community through volunteerism and just formed a lot of relationships. So she was one of the teachers that many students would come back to visit. Just always had a bright smile on her face, and she will definitely be missed.
All right, we are going to have a slight adjustment. We're going to move the personnel agenda up, and we're just going to move the whole personnel agenda up, all the items. So do I have a motion? Any questions, comments on anything on the personnel agenda?
No.
All right, we'll take a vote, and then I'll turn it to Dr. Warden. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're going to be appointing tonight a new science teacher. I know Dr. Summers is going to say a few words about him. He has to stand.
So we are very happy to welcome Chad McPeak. He comes to us with a year's worth of experience at Ravina Quemens, but he also did his student teaching under the guidance of a much beloved science teacher, Katie Whitaker. And so he is very thrilled to be back here at Red Hook, and we are thrilled to have him. His specialty is earth science. So welcome, Chad.
Congratulations. And also tonight we're announcing our new PPS director, Amanda Allison, and George is here as well. Hi, George, yes. So Dr. Summer is going to say a few words about her.
So we are very pleased to welcome Amanda Allison. She comes to us with a vast amount of experience in all areas of special education. One of the most common things I heard about Amanda is that she has a true love for her students. She has a true love for building relationships with all stakeholder groups. She's very community oriented, and she'll do everything from ride the bus to get down and work with a kid on the floor. So, but she has a vast amount of experience. Her background is in social work. She has worked at a number of different districts, including BOCES. So her knowledge of different levels of special ed services is very deep, very vast, and wide. And she has a sense of humor, which came throughout the process. And the whole team that went through this process is very much overjoyed that she is joining us here at Red Hook. So she'll start at the end of July, and we are just thrilled to welcome you, Amanda, to Red Hook Central School District.
Right.
You can go to Holy Cow, George, if you want to. There's a really good ice cream place here.
we're now going to move on to recognitions. The Red Hook High School Theater Group for the production of Bye Bye Birdie.
Mr. Roddy's headed up, but I can see if they can all come up. So we're so proud to invite you. I know a lot of our board members wanted to make sure that they could commend. You can come closer. You have to put a little performance on now that you're here. Oh, good. All right. So we want to commend you on inspiring students to continue in theater. The plays have just been phenomenal. Every year it gets better and better and better. So we really appreciate the hard work. We know how many hours it takes to pull something like that off. And when you come and see it, all the student participation is what really sticks with me. Students directing, helping out with the dancing. It's absolutely unbelievable. And I know Mr. Roddy has some words as well.
Yeah, on behalf of the high school, I want to thank all of you for your individuals who make it tonight. Just mention everyone that's here and those even that can't make it because it's a team endeavor. Maybe just raise your hand when I say your name. Our director, Andrew McCarthy, our producer, Brendan Fix. Mr. Funicello was not available tonight, but he was our choral director, among many other things. Mr. Bartnett. Mr. Steve Hutman wasn't available. He did set design. And Mr. Ben Rollins, who manages our theater. And I should have mentioned Mr. Bartnett, among his many contributions, certainly led the pit band and a number of other things. Our music department is just so incredible in this district. You've all seen it. And I think that really just supercharges, our musical every year. But it's a team endeavor, and the hours that all these folks put in, it's just incredible. You get here in the morning, they're having meetings, talking about this. They're still here at 9, 10 at night. And I wouldn't say most importantly, because our director is here, but kind of second most importantly, we have a student here, Lennon Winters, because the students are obviously what it's all about. And I think any of the adults involved that provide their leadership would say the same. Lennon is an incredible student, leader of our student body in many ways. And there's so many students that are so talented, both front of house, on the stage, and back of house, doing things like the lights and even the marketing and the volunteering. There's a book, In Search of Deeper Learning, that talks about innovative instructional strategies, project-based learning. IB has mentioned all sorts of things. There's a whole chapter dedicated to musical productions. Because when you think about real-life experiences that mirror the real world, being part of a production like this, that is learning. That is project-based learning. If you could do that, the sky's the limit. And very, very few other venues can you learn how to build something with a saw, sing the right pitch, and understand how to market something all at the same time. And, it's a huge endeavor for the adults, but also for the students. And the growth that we see in those students from start to finish, it makes such a difference on our quality of life, how our district is perceived. I think that our musical and our theater and, our concerts as well, they're some of the crown jewels of this district, and they have been in what could be a better setting. PAC is obviously incredible, and they bring it to life. So I thank all of you for your efforts, your energy, and your dedication to our students, and I thank the board for acknowledging them tonight.
Take a bow. Thank you.
Thanks.
Awesome.
All right. We seem to be lacking our student BOE representative this evening, so we will just move along. Presentations, that brings us to the BOCES budget presentation.
So I know, I think Karen's right behind you, isn't she? Hey, hi, Karen. Well, Karen's our mayor as well as one of the BOCES board members, so thanks for coming.
Excellent.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh,
Congratulations.
probably thrilled.
Question as it relates to the number of students that we have participating in programs at Duchess Bosie's relative to other districts in the county. I think we have 6 in the alternative high school, 1 in district programming, and I think 35 in CTI, and that's out of a district of a little over 1,600 students. How do we, on a per capita basis, if you will, how does our participation compare with other districts? Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, and I know we've upped our CTI numbers tremendously. I think from 5 years ago, help me here. I, yeah. So we've definitely seen an increase in those programs and supporting students who want to those. We also have other students that attend Capital, other BOCES, Questar BOCES program. Like heavy equipment.
Okay, thanks for taking my question and answering it perhaps better than asked, so appreciate that.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
Thank you.
congratulations.
All right.
Hi.
Holy cow is down the road.
Yeah.
too, for you, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. And before we move on to the next exciting budget presentation, if there's anyone here that was here for recognition or some of our new members of our district, you are welcome to exit left or right, whichever way.
Yes. Most wonderful time of the year.
You know I love numbers. Go for it.
There we go. So I will not go line by line through this. I'll really try to give you a high-level overview of where we are with the 25-26 budget, which is really where we were a couple of weeks ago when we talked about the first draft, except now it's all in balance. So we made a few tweaks, we tightened things up, revised a few estimates, and we are now fully in balance, looking at a 3.43% movement in expenditures and in revenues. So this was, as we've been talking through the spring, shaping up to be a relatively routine budget with a few scary things hanging out there, maybe from the federal side, for example, but really shaping up to be a relatively routine budget year. On the revenue side, we are under the tax cap, and I'll talk about that a little bit more on a later slide. The tax cap is, again, a higher than normal number for a couple of reasons that I'll talk about. And on the state aid piece, I'm using essentially the governor's proposal, even though the state has not settled their budget yet. They're still working on it. When I say essentially the governor's proposal, those numbers are in fact estimates as well. They did not, for example, know about our completion of our final cost reports or early aid starts for our capital projects. So those numbers weren't captured there. Oftentimes I will take governor's numbers on things like BOCES aid and transportation aid, and I will adjust them downward a little bit because they tend to come in a little bit short. This year I did not do that because in my understanding, the Assembly and the Senate is looking to go a little higher than the governor. So what we've got in there right now is what I refer to as essentially the governor's proposal. We bumped fund balance, assigned fund balance just a hair. I've been trying to keep that below 5% of total funding, but it's running in the 4 to 5% range. And then we continue to build budgets that are increasingly dependent on miscellaneous revenues. So whether those revenues be services to other governments, tuition paying students, tuitions paid by other districts, interest earnings, we have become more and more dependent, and those revenues have become more and more reliable. Even though they represent a fairly small percentage of total revenues, that number has gotten bigger every single year. So at a high level, this is a budget that should serve us well for 25-26. It should set us up well for 26-27. It has a lot of known things in it, but part of the art of budget making is to incorporate some of the unknown things, and I think there's a little room for that. It'll need to be tended carefully during the 25-26 year, but it's a budget that I think will serve us well, both in the 25-26 year as well as moving forward. We can go to the next slide. We are obligated as we do our formal budget presentations to talk about the budget in 3 parts. So a number of years ago, we were mandated to present budgets that way. So this slide accomplishes that. You can see the vast majority of our money is spent in program. We also have to break out a capital component and an administrative component. And we can go to the next slide. Our tax cap calculation this year came to 3.99%. It was just a hair lower than that last year, and there are 3 major factors in why our tax cap is at that number. One is probably the best known factor, which is the CPI factor. CPI was at 2.95% this year, but in the tax cap calculation formula, the highest number they will allow for inflation is 2%, so 2% indexing upward for the CPI adjustment. We talked a lot about the tax-based growth factor last year. Last year, our tax-based growth factor was higher than usual, but not this high. And what the tax-based growth factor is real growth in the tax base. So we're not talking about the assessor came out last year and said your house was worth $400,000, and this year he came out and he said $450,000. We're talking about new buildings, new additions, new improvements that make a real expansion in the tax base and allow us to spread the taxes over that larger tax base. So last year, we came out with about a 3.5% tax levy, and we said that because the tax-based growth factor was a hair over 1%, that folks would probably experience about a 2.25% increase in their actual tax bill. Most folks around the district were actually quite a bit lower than that. Many actually experienced decreases in their tax bill, and that was a function of the growing tax base. So as we move into 25-26, we're again looking at a significant tax-based growth factor. Now, that is a backward-looking growth factor, so if the growth were to stall completely or reverse, then we wouldn't experience that same. We would have essentially already experienced it. But that makes up a significant part of our tax cap calculation. And then the local share of capital projects is actually going down just a hair. The debt service goes up a little bit, but because the aid is kicking in now and because we're using a little bit of money next year from the debt service fund, the local share of capital cost actually goes down just a hair. So when you do all of that math, that's how we arrive at the 2.99% tax cap, and we are just a hair under that.
You mean 3.99?
3.99 tax cap, and we are proposing a levy of just under that.
Go back, the amount we're proposing is how much?
The actual tax levy is 2.98 on that previous, 3.98. On that previous slide, it was a slightly different number because there are some other numbers lumped in there under tax-related items. But the tax levy itself is at 3.98, just a hair under the cap.
Like a hair.
A hair. And we can go to the next slide. So there is the tax cap. I won't walk through the whole thing, but the highlighted items there are the ones that I talked about. So you start with the base year levy. You make a number of adjustments, the most important ones being the 3 that I just talked about, and you arrive at the final absolute tax levy limit. And we can keep going. And I think that's where Aaron comes back.
So May 20th is our vote. Items on the ballot. So we have the budget, we have the bus proposition, we do have a capital project vote, we have money that's been requested from the Red Hook Library and also the Tivoli Library, and we have 2 vacant board seats this year. Next slide. So our bus proposition, we've spent a lot of time in the last years talking about the bus mandate. Just to review really quickly, we have to have the fleet completely converted to electric buses by 2035. We have 44 vehicles. We are in receipt of the 2 EV buses that were approved last year. This week they will be getting the 2-way radios as well as the cameras put in, so they should be on the road when we return from spring break. We also outfitted the bus garage to be able to charge up to 6 buses. 2 of those buses that we have are getting charged. But if you remember from the energy efficiency study that I shared, we have the capacity to charge 6 without doing an infrastructure project. So the bus proposition for this May will be asking for a maximum expenditure of 1.2 million in total, or 300,000 per bus. But just to remind the board that we do get our aid on the full price of the bus. So it will cost the taxpayers, if the state aid rate stays the same, under $10,000 per bus. Next slide. Our capital project consists of reconstructing the track around Field 1, which connects the high school and the middle school, to install a new fence surrounding the track, to reconstruct a grass field on Field 1, and install LED lights outside of the field. So that is the outdoor work. And for the interior work, we're asking for upgrades to the high school bathrooms, which are vintage 1963. So the capital project proposition cost, this also includes capitalized interest, is just over $6 million. To remind you that our state aid rate is $64.4 million, so the cost there to the average taxpayer on a $400,000 house is about 20 years over 15 years. It does start out a little higher. It actually decreases to nothing as debt service falls out, but that's an average over 15 years. We're happy to take any questions.
Questions? No, I think we've been through it a lot,
Yeah.
so, yeah. Yeah. All right, that brings us to recognition of visitors. Sorry, brings us to recognition of visitors. If anyone would like to address the board, please, you can approach the podium, state your name, keep it to 3 minutes. I'll give you a subtle wave as you get close. Anybody? All right. Then we will move on to budget discussion. Do we have any questions, comments on the budget? No. We need to vote to approve it. So do I have a motion?
Motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All in favor. We need to approve the budget reports. Do I have a motion?
Motion. Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. That gets us through the budget. Dr. Warden?
Yeah, so we're looking forward to spring break. I know today we hosted Red Hook together, and Lambs had a handball contest, so it was a pretty great place to be today. And the teachers won against the students. This is their 23rd year of winning. They win no other events except the handball game. So I'm sure there's something going on there. So it was great to have Red Hook together. We had a lot of members of the public come today, and our mayor was able to come, but also a lot of the Rotary, VFW, the library. So it was great to have I think it's maybe our food. We had about 30 people come to that meeting today, so that was great to host. Looking over the reports, I just do want to start out with the high school too, and I know that there's a lot of talk at the state level about banning cell phones. So Mr. Roddy and his team have been discussing this topic a lot this year. So just also getting perceptions from students. So we are thinking that currently at the state level that this will, Hochul is proposing to ban cell phones during school hours. We're thinking that probably is going to happen. So we've definitely done that work. So I just want to keep everybody aware that once it happens, that's going to be our first conversation. So there's many conversations going on about that. I did email you about that the high school flex class had a guest speaker on how to run a cookie company, so that was wonderful. Mr. Brugier and Mrs. Huber had their Roman architect show. There was a ton of parents there, so it was a wonderful event to also be at. As part of our grant, Ms. Duncan and Mr. Giorgio, Mr. Makovich, and Ms. Barberi participated in our mental health first aid and structure training, which we're hoping then we will also be able to do that for our students. So we're happy to see that grant money in action. Over at Lambs, I hope some of you were able to see the Shakespeare performance. That continues to go on through our arts and education program. I know some of you were able to attend the Latin Cultural Fair, which I think was so wonderful. Every year it's more impressive, but they had local restaurants were there. They had 6 interactive classroom experiences, and the students were able to rotate and see all the different cultural traditions and have some really great food. So that was wonderful.
All my dad talked about. My dad was thrilled.
And we had kindergarten screening. That's always wonderful to see. We also had our community engagement team visit Mill Road. I think we got a lot of really good feedback from that good group, and we look forward to them going to the middle school soon. And we started testing this week, 338 testing, and there were some technical issues that were experienced. It appears to be in this region. Today we were able to do testing without any problems, so we will also now need to continue after break due to the technical issues that I believe that came from the RIC, which is the Regional Information System, which then came, I think, even beyond that from NWEA. So I think it was statewide, or at least I know it was in this county and in Ulster County. So we're happy to say it was working again today. And I will turn it over to Dr. Summers to talk about teaching and learning.
Thank you, Dr. Warden. So just briefly, with teaching and learning, we're certainly planning for our summer curriculum project. So inputs coming in from teacher leaders and teachers. We will continue to work on scheduling professional development for the summer. Right now, we do have scheduled pre-K through 5 literacy review of curriculum maps. And also technology PD will be led by Donna Seelbach and her office in collaboration with my office. Right now they're surveying the staff to identify needs in that area. We are planning for the summer schools, which really the building administrators take the lead in. So we'll be looking to do an elementary, special education, and credit recovery at the high school level for schools. Summer Academy is in the planning stage. Today we sent out requests for proposals from teachers, and we are certainly getting excited about the Budget Expo. Administrators and teacher leaders are working to make sure we highlight all our great programs. So that's our update.
Dr. Hayes?
Thank you. So a few facilities updates. So the state allows us a $35,000 allowance to upgrade our camera system. So I met with Mr. Roddy and Mrs. Lynch about some upgrades that we want to do at the high school, and that will be done this year, which is great. We are also, over spring break, we're painting the gym hallway to match the work that we did over last summer, converting it from the blue and pink to red, white, and gray. So that whole hallway will be done and finished before the kids return after spring break. As you know, I know that Dr. Warden has talked about the heat bill. So the high school is fully equipped with air conditioning. Some of the rooms here at Mill Road are, and none of the rooms at Lambs. So we now have installed power in all the rooms in Lambs and the ones here at Mill Road that didn't have power, so we can have portable units for air conditioning. So all 3 buildings will be running AC should we have warm days this spring, which is hard to think about when we had frost on the windows this morning. But
It's going to snow.
yeah, it is coming. Absolutely. We installed new window signs on every new window here at Mill Road, so you'll see from the outside. It is something that we are mandated to have, but we worked with fast signs and we got new signs for window identification. We're working with the town next week for some sweeping in all the parking lots of all the buildings while it's closed. Our transportation, I mentioned this at the facilities committee meeting, but just something to keep on the radar. Our bus lift broke or, expired at the transportation garage. It was old, but it's going to be in need of replacement, and that will be something that we have to talk about putting on a capital project. It's pretty extensively involved because of site work that needs to be done. It's expensive equipment to lift the bus, so that is something that we need to put on the agenda for a future capital project. Update from the Education Foundation. So I had mentioned the Education Foundation is offering 2 scholarships to seniors this year. One is for a student going to a 4-year program. One is for a student going to a 2-year program. They had 25 applicants, which they were excited about. So they are sifting through applications, and they will award those winners by the end of the month. And each of the winners gets $2,500 towards their program for the length of the program. They are also having a gala on June 20th to raise money specifically for the scholarships. Rotary update. On April 26th, they're having the Highway Cleanup Day. So if anybody's interested, from 10 to 12, they're meeting at the Sabroso parking lot, and they're working on Route 9 North in Upper Red Hook. So that is the highway that they're going to clean up. They are sponsoring Apple Blossom Day, which is on May 10th this year, and they are having a blood drive truck, which will be in front of Cole Rocklia, right by the Village Hall. They are in need of 50 people to donate blood. They don't have quite that many people signed up yet, but we did have flyers that we sent home through the virtual backpack with a QR code if you're interested in signing up, but they're hoping people come to donate blood for that. And the Interact Club, which is run through the high school, is going to help sell recipe books. So in honor of 75 years of the Rotary, they put together a local recipe book. So Dr. Warden has a recipe in there. She might sign it if you buy a book. But they're selling those.
I might have had help.
For support.
Jello out of microwave.
It's great. All kinds. Appetizers. Right? What did you put in, Dr. Warden? Sloppy Joes?
I'm not discussing it. You'll have to wait. You have to buy a recipe.
We have to buy a book. And we are excited to announce that we are $4 million under budget for the 2020 capital project.
Very nice.
Yeah. First reported 2, now it's...
Yeah, that's great.
That's it.
All right. I'm soaking in the $4 million under budget. All right, that brings us to Board of Ed review, committees. We'll just start with policy. Charlie, if you want to provide a readout.
Yeah, so we had a couple on for a first read, but most of what you'll see even in the agenda tonight, we have 12 on for a second read. There's one on homebound instruction, which is just like when you're at home and the school's providing services, so we looked at that one today. There's some more to come, but it was most are on for a second read.
Thank you. Community engagement.
All right. So for the Community Engagement Committee, we spent the entire time sifting through some of the feedback that was provided by our community partnership teams. As Dr. Warden mentioned, there's been 2 tours and discussions, one at the high school, one at Mill Road. The next one is forthcoming at Lambs. But each time we've gathered feedback, and we're a group of over a dozen community members kind of going on a tour, the same presentation through the buildings, but we are receiving feedback that is unique to the experience of each participant, and in some cases the experience of their child going through our schools as well. So all the feedback is really valuable. It's cool to see like the wide variety of takeaways, things that are being recognized by the members of the CPT, and then and also the areas for growth. So what we want to do over the next couple committee meetings is continue to go through the feedback, synthesize it so that we can share out to the public and to you all here, and then also consider what next steps might be in terms of reviewing the feedback with Dr. Warden and her leadership team. A lot, as you can imagine, a lot of the feedback is specific to the buildings, and I think a lot of the questions that come up, they would be better answered by a member of the leadership team at the district or building level. So coming up with some way to look through that all together, whether it's, towards the end of the year or over the summer, and then figure out what is actionable, what's going to be a part of the long-term, using that feedback to improve our schools and the experience for our students.
Excellent.
Thanks.
And when is the last tour?
May 5th. It's on May 5th.
May 5th, okay. All right.
At Lambs.
Lambs.
Yeah, okay. Hmm?
Is it the same time?
Yes.
9 to 11.
9 to 11.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll be there for that one.
All right, hopefully I can make it. And lastly, facilities.
We had a great facilities committee meeting today. I feel like it was great. There were a lot of really great positives around, where we're headed. We did preview the sketches and design for the gymnasium at the high school. We are currently awaiting the third-party review still. We talked about, Tom Casada is still working with the architects on logistics, and that information will be coming through to Facilities Committee to review those sketches, to discuss any changes that need to be made, if necessary. But, we feel that we're cautious to share those sketches just yet with the public until all of those final changes are made. The second item, which was kind of a larger discussion, is the May capital project. I think the biggest thing we have to keep in mind is, should it pass, there are things that are difficult to draw some conclusions about, like design and maintenance, until it is approved, looking at the specifics, whether it be sod or grass, considering manpower, machinery, and we will take into consideration those Cornell recommendations. The difficult conversation that came up is, we had the intention to replace the fields in the back first, but given the situation with closing Field 1 due to safety, we may need to revisit the priority of which field gets replaced first. We have two things that come to mind that play in on that. The first is the sewer. That could delay our ability to fully execute that replacement in the back. And then again, Field 1, that is it's a learning space as well, so there really is a priority there as it does affect programs. We would like conceptual agreement by April 22nd. Please correct me if I'm wrong on that. As far as what our plan is, should that capital project pass, do we want to look at prioritizing which fields? So that's a conversation we can have. We thought that was a really important conversation to have. Do we want to have that conversation now, or?
I mean, it doesn't, I think if people are willing, I think we might as well dive into it, unless, the other suggestion I had was having Dr. Hayes synthesize sort of an outline and circulating that to us ahead of the next meeting to then have an informed public discussion, unless that was enough information for us to sort of talk it through.
It's probably worth a little bit of discussion now so that we all are educated enough to ponder this in advance of the next meeting. I don't know that, this is something that we can fully, discuss and work through this evening, but
Right.
I'd be interested to learn a little bit more about the issues as it relates to making a decision around timing. I mean, we've gotten approval from voters to do 2 fields, and yet one of them we may be delayed because the town sewer project, and that would have implications on what we would, because that's where our leach field is.
And then the other would be, we can't do 2 fields at the same time.
And then the other one is the
Right.
soccer field, but we, can't do the soccer field and field number 1 inside the track at the same time.
Right.
So
And maybe, Aaron, you could elaborate, because I asked that question too, why not? Why don't you explain a little bit as to why we can't do them at the same time? Other than like literal logistics, but they're
Right.
separate. Yeah.
So there's a cost allowance. You know, we've talked a lot about cost allowance, but the state assigns X number of dollars for cost allowance on different schools. So that's something to take into consideration. Field 1 actually distributes the cost allowance to both Lambs and the high school because of where it's situated, and because it's shared by both of the schools. The other thing is that they're separate capital projects. So if you remember in October, we put up those votes separately. So right now we're working on the gym space, the Lambs columns. Phase 2 is coming up in terms of the lights and the air conditioning, and then the field votes were separate. So if we engage in the design work on one, that's a separate contract with the architect and the construction group, then this would be a whole separate capital project. We can't work on both simultaneously. They're not part of the same project. So we do need to make a decision, because once we are already starting preliminary conversations about phase 2, talking about the air conditioning, talking about the lighting, and then next will be the design of the field. We have to decide which field we are going to do first.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Makes sense, and it does seem, I mean, I think this is something we all have to ponder and discuss further. It does seem there's a good argument for prioritizing Field 1 since we currently have that closed.
Yeah, I
feel
mean,
like it affects, day-to-day, PE classes, and other programs. I feel like that happen on a daily basis on that field.
well, and I think we said, it is our job to prioritize safety. So the fact that we close that field for safety, I think that's where our focus has to be. The other fields are still operable. You can still use them. There's no safety issue with the soccer field, correct? It's just, an entire irrigation system. So, we talked, so if May goes and we get that approved, hopefully, we immediately start on the design work for Field 1 to get that moving. If it doesn't pass, then we would have to have probably an emergency facilities committee meeting to figure out a backup plan, because no matter what, it's closed until we fix it. So
Right.
that's just another layer to this complexity. But I think what we need to decide is, do we conceptually agree that should this go first, that is the priority field right now? Field 1.
Right.
Before the other two. And keeping in mind that the far field, the added layer of complexity is the village sewer system. While we are fairly certain it will not impact, we are not fully sure yet of the pipes and where they travel to that could potentially impact that field. So that might be delayed regardless based on the sewer system. Does that
Right.
make sense?
So,
It's a layer.
Right, that the bigger question with that one field in the far east in the back, that is our leach field, and if we end up using sewer, we no longer need that leach field, but if we don't, we do need that leach field, so it doesn't make sense to dig it up if we have to rebuild it.
Right.
So we need to, that is delaying that decision for that second field in the proposition that was approved in October.
Right. Well, until we actually start construction on any of these, we're not borrowing the money and our voters aren't
Correct.
incurring any costs, which is an important point to
Yeah, very.
keep in mind.
Yeah.
So while we may need to reprioritize timing on on what we have passed, until we borrow the money and spend it, we're not incurring it. So.
Right.
Just a question. So regardless of the sewer situation, we still have the conflict of not being able to do construction on two fields at the same time?
So it's really a cost issue and a cost allowance. I mean, we would have our financial planners play that out, but it's also time and design. We have to tell the architects and the construction group which one we want to prioritize that they put their efforts into first. They're completely different fields with different needs. They have to be analyzed. They both need irrigation and drainage systems, and then we have to decide the details of what it's made up of. Sod, seed, sand, how much sand, what it looks like to grow, how long we have to be off of it. When it does grow, what does the maintenance plan look like? There's a lot that goes into all of the detailed work of that.
And also, my understanding, right, is that Tom's doing sort of shuffle with these fields. So if we take two out of commission at the same time, that further reduces, student access. The more games.
Yeah,
Yeah,
th-
it's
that's
not
the harder
ideal,
part of
yeah.
taking the soccer field and the field inside the track out at the same time, is those are both competition fields for certain sports, and it really makes it more difficult for Tom to do his shuffling.
Since you're going to be shuffling, one of the things that would be helpful for me to know is if the size of the fields meet the requirements for the different sports. So if you're going to be taking one or the other, can you play both sports on a certain field? Or what does that mean then? What are you doing for field 3 versus field 1 in terms of a sports schedule?
So I can't speak to the schedule piece. I'd have to ask Tom now, but we did have that discussion. The fields are all different sizes, and they're not regulation for every sport to be played on every field. So for example, I know that the field 1 is very difficult. The soccer coaches don't want to play there. I think it has to do with the width. Football can't be played on that back field where the soccer field is. The goal lines aren't there. It's not long enough to be played on.
Are these things we're looking at as we're planning the fields for the future? I mean, so they're
not multi-purpose.
No.
Yeah, I guess I understand. I mean, like, can you not expand the size of the footprint of the field in that case if you needed to change something in the future? It seems, I'm
I
just
don't think
saying
we
there's
voted on
an
that, yeah.
expense and a cost there. It seems intelligent to think about multiple uses, even if it's already existing in a certain capacity now.
We did talk about, how different sports have different like footwork and equipment that does, wear certain spaces more than others. So like, lacrosse has a different footwork and that tends to dig up a field more, and that you couldn't have lacrosse playing on a soccer field where they're running and kicking a ball, and there were many logistics to that.
Sorry.
I would also argue, though, I hear what you're saying, but, the field 1 is clearly very different from the current soccer field because it's got a track, right? So that in and of itself dictates the width, the shape, and the size versus the soccer fields that are just flat. So, yeah, I think it would be great to use multi-purpose, but I just don't think it's feasible.
Do we have
Yeah,
the space?
yeah.
Is it?
I think we've even heard from our esteemed soccer coach that the soccer field
Aside
should
from
be
the lining, I think the issue with the grass field is the use soccer and football occur during the same season. So especially without lights, you're limited on time that you can have for practice. I can't speak to every specific that, Tom would be able to articulate, but I know that I don't know how you practice 3 teams when you're limited in 2 hours of daylight in the fall, or where you would have those games. So I think there's a number of issues to consider.
But equally as important is that space on field 1 is used for PE outdoor education for both Lambs and the high school. So that's an added layer. Those other fields aren't, but that field is. That's an outdoor education field, field 1. Right, shared by both schools. So that heightens the priority as well.
Maybe helpful to have Tom at our next meeting. Yeah.
Can I ask a question? When a capital project is approved by voters, is there some amount of consideration for the timeline in working or beginning a project, or sensitivity towards that aspect of it? Or is it okay for it to happen just whenever the time is right?
So I think there's 2 different answers to that question. One, there's no legal requirement. There's no statute of limitations. I do think there's a sensitivity to it in that you've put it before the voters and there's an expectation that that get done. However, I think in light of the fact that we had to close down a field because of safety, I do think that that is an important conversation to have in how we move forward. But the state doesn't require you to do it in a certain amount of time or at all.
Yeah, and I agree, Jen, I asked the same question because, again, we know the public voted, with an expectation, and we certainly don't want to generate any kind of noise around favoritism. Again, I want to almost take the sports out of it and put it back to safety, because I think, I don't want to get into a dialogue of well, this one's more important. If we could do it all at the same time, be amazing. But I keep saying, we shut it down for safety, and that has to be, in my opinion, our priority.
Right.
And it's less than ideal, but it is what it is.
It's true, and yeah. Other
When
questions?
if we invite Tom to talk further on this, could we also get sort of a schedule to understand better how often PE classes use Field 1? I'd be just curious to see that. I'm not sure if I have seen that information thus far exactly.
Yeah,
So just
we
to
can ask him to come speak to that.
hear
Sure.
more
Yeah.
specifically about the amount of use that the PE classes have on that specific field. Thank you.
All right. More.
So we can chew on it some more, but on the second, we have to give you a conceptual plan.
Well, do we have to make a decision on the 22nd? I mean, we're making a decision in advance of whether it's approved.
So the field planning is scheduled to start in June, so we need to make some kind of decision. We're having all those preliminary conversations, but we have to have the vote on the 20th to see if it passes, so.
That's my question.
But the reason that Kate is saying the 22nd, that's the only time that we're together before the vote happens.
Okay. All right.
And we'll have Tom there.
Okay.
And then the last thing, Russ, we did talk about some of the summer projects at Mill Road. We have some signs that will be going out. They'll be freestanding, just labeling the buildings, looking at some blacktop expansion. And at Lamb's, we're looking to paint the blue in the hallways, lightening up the cafeteria floor. And in there, it's really dark. Looking at some new shades and assisting with the purchase of the piano lab. And then lastly, in the high school, looking to upgrades with some paint and to renovate the cafeteria with some functional furniture.
Sounds like a busy committee meeting. Excellent. All right. General BOE member comments. This is the time to ask anything, share anything, get anything off your chest. Anybody?
I did want to say something about the Latin Cultural Fair. It's my first time getting to attend. I thought it was really great. There's a lot of really positive energy in that building, and the students really hold a lot of it. And it was really enjoyable to experience, not just the sharing of the food, but of all the installations and all the work that they've created. And as a tour goes, one of the things I'm leaving there is going, how did you fit all this into a certain time slot? Because there's so much. I mean, it's just a lot. And another takeaway I had was how to share that with the other parts of the district. I was just wondering about that. Not needed to answer, but just how can the other pieces maybe be included? Like, did they have a field trip or an eye into this in some capacity? But yeah, anyway, it just seemed like there's, I don't know, a lot of good energy around it could carry for more than what it did. And it was very impressive to get all that done in that short time frame, too. Yeah, it was a lot.
Anybody else? All right, that brings us to policy review. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Do I have a second? Do we have any questions, comments on any of the policies here? All in favor? Aye. Consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
You have to say it out loud, Charlie.
I did. Second.
Any questions, comments? No?
No.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And we've done personnel agenda, so that brings us to the second recognition of visitors. Do we have anybody that would like to address the board? No? That brings us to adjournment. Do I have a motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you.
Enjoy your trips if you're going on.
Yes, enjoy your spring breaks.
Are you going anywhere?
Enjoy no school tomorrow.
Going anywhere?
You work?